As always, with my wish. Ashokji, you want to start?
Sure. My wish. The lover has to keep the wish of the beloved. My wish for my lovers is as follows. 1. Do not shirk your responsibilities. 2. Attend faithfully to your worldly duties, but always keep at the back of your mind that all this is Baba's. 3. When you feel happy, think Baba wants me to be happy. When you suffer, think Baba wants me to suffer. 4. Be resigned to every situation and think honestly and sincerely. Baba has placed me in this situation. 5. With the understanding that Baba is in everyone, try to help and serve others. 6. I say with my divine authority to each and all that whosoever takes my name at the time of breathing his last to me, breathing his last comes to me. So do not forget to remember me in your last moments. Unless you start remembering me from now on, it will be difficult to remember me when your end approaches. You should start practicing from now on. Even if you take my name only once every day, you will not forget to remember me in your dying moments. Avatar Meher Baba Kije.
Avtar Meher Baba ki jai. Thank you. So we have to start with the next theme. So we have finished consciousness. We are now getting into sanskaras. Before that, I know I was not there when these two chapters were done. I have two questions or thoughts, and if you have any reactions, we can start with that. Any thoughts on violence and non-violence? The examples. Anybody went back and read about it again? Anybody had any thoughts or questions? No, we are the super PhD experts of
Mm,
of
yeah,
Baba's written word. But when I find the time, I will try to create a little assignment around this, where each one of us can try to classify. I think I'm more interested to identify the progression of violence and non-violence classification so that we can apply this in our day-to-day life. So let me try to put something together and
yeah.
share so that we can do that as a week experiment, right? So we do it in during the week and then we discuss about it in the end of the week. Coming to the
Absolutely.
next one.
Yeah, I think the thought that I expressed during this reading was, which lingered on for some time. Of course, beyond that, I have not done any studies. Is the violence of the mental type.
Hmm?
The violence, lust also is a kind of violence. That you are overpowering somebody. In that sense, is violence. The shouting, getting angry at somebody, wishing bad things for somebody,
Hmm?
that cursing somebody, so to say, is also can be termed as part of violence actually. So that's what lingered on me after I read. I mean, because in our normal life we are not hitting people, and the physical violence is very rare. We in the day-to-day life, in the environment that we live, we hardly get into that kind of violence.
Absolutely.
But we still have the violence of the other type, mental violence,
So I
scolding
think
somebody junior, or calling names to people, that
ah,
kind of violence is there. So we should think that is also violence, and maybe apply those situations also with what is Baba has said in these chapters. Jai Baba.
I would say that that goes into this, right? That is the nature of action. Because Baba is
Yeah,
clear
yeah.
on, if you look at the way the chapters and the examples were, they were to bring out specifically I mean, of course, I agree with you
Mm,
100% that in today's context, in our context, uh, uh,
yeah.
army man will have a different viewpoint, and so on and so forth. But then, in our viewpoint of the people of generally on this call, we never indulge in violence. other than maybe someone who has a very small kid who may be, giving one tight slap when the kid misbehaves. But
Yeah.
other than that, I don't think we indulge in physical violence at all. But the focus of these two chapters are clearly at that, right? So,
Yes. Yes.
but very good. See, this is what we want, right? We want to think beyond what's there and then try to explore and try to get deeper. Jump in, Kama. You don't have to put your hand up. You want to say something, or was it accidental?
So,
Sorry, my mute button was on.
Yeah.
So I'm saying any kind of violence can be physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual. It all comes under the form of ego. Can be passive or active. It can be all the English alphabets from A to Z: anger, aversion, backbiting, craving, and all of these come under the umbrella of ego. So violence is part of the ego personality self. How you express it, whether through thoughts, words, or deeds, is the question. So I
Yes.
think that we can't have to compartmentalize it. I think we are very clear here.
Hmm.
The the challenge we are facing is between love and ego. So love is your realized self, which is what we all are, and the ego is the false I self or the false identification with the gross subtle mental body based on our sanskaras, gross subtle or mental. And what we are doing is basically to dissolve these sanskaras using intelligent action, what we call as unwinding sanskaras. So the whole challenge about living in the waking state is how to dissolve your ego using intelligent action. Jai Baba.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
well,
Great.
well, well summarized. Thank you. So let's get started with the sanskaras theme then. So there are three parts and one chapter. So actually, technically four parts. The first is the formation of and function of sanskaras. Then there are three parts on the removal, right? So let's get to the reading. Okay. Ashok, do you want to read for a bit?
sure, sure. The formation and function of sanskaras. There are, before that, the subtopic analysis of
Yeah,
human experience.
actually, let's read the subtopics and then come here. I forgot.
Um, uh,
Yeah, you can read it. I mean, it's just one by one, so that we
okay,
be
okay.
looking out for this. Yeah.
Essence of the chapter: analysis of human experience. Sanskaras originate in experience. Natural and non-natural sanskaras. Manifested life arises out of will to be conscious in absolute. Lahar within absolute compared to a wave on the ocean. Absolute unchanged by bhas of manifestation. Most original bhas. Progressive evolution of consciousness and forms. Human consciousness. Winding of sanskaras. Examples of potency of impressions. Impressions of superstitions. Experience becomes harmonious when freed from sanskaras. Type of sanskaras and state of consciousness. Self-conscious souls free from sanskaras. So, do we read the subtopics when we come to the main, or
Yes, yes,
I
please.
think it is. Yeah. Yeah. That we need read it again.
Also,
yeah?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Thanks, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Analysis of human experience. There are two aspects of human experience: the subjective and objective. On the one hand, there are mental processes that constitute essential ingredients of human experience, and on the other hand, there are things and objects to which they refer. The mental processes are partly dependent upon the immediately given objective situation and partly dependent upon the functioning of accumulated sanskaras or impressions of previous experiences. The human mind thus finds itself between a sea of past sanskaras on one side and the whole extensive objective world on the other. You,
Okay, I think key thing that's been said here. I hope everybody's comfortable with the difference between subjective and objective, right? So the mental processes that are about the mind itself is the subjective, I mean the objective, and everything else is the objective part, right? So what you're dealing with as the creative universe, as things around you, anything other than the mind itself is basically objective, right? And yeah, I think that's what is key in this para. Okay.
okay. Sanskaras originate in experience. Human actions are based upon the operation of the impressions stored in the mind through previous experiences. Every thought, emotion, and act is grounded in groups of impressions that, when considered objectively, are seen to be modifications of the mind. These impressions are deposits of previous experiences and become the most important factors in determining the course of present and future experience. The mind is constantly creating and gathering such impressions in the course of its experience. When occupied with the physical objects of this world, such as the body, nature, and other things, the mind is, so to say, externalized and creates gross impressions. When it is busy with its own subjective mental processes, which are the expressions of already existing sanskaras, it creates subtle and mental impressions. The question whether sanskaras come first or experience comes first is like the question whether the hen or the egg comes first. Both are conditions of each other and develop side by side. The problem of understanding the significance of human experience, therefore, turns around the problems of understanding the formation and function of sanskaras.
I'll let you pause there. So key line in this paragraph is when it is busy with its own subjective mental processes, which are the expressions of already existing sanskaras, it creates subtle and mental impressions. So basically, when the mind is doing it's focusing on the mind itself, not the objective. It's actually creating sanskaras, which are mental and subtle. So that's something to take away. And of course, the classic question of which comes first, right? So whether the experience comes first or the sanskara comes first. So the nature of the ego and the soul at that stage determines whether it is sanskara or just remains as an experience. I mean, this is my thought. That's not being said here. I'm saying that if you're able to stay detached, then it's just an experience that goes away. If you're not, then it creates in it the seed of sanskara. Yeah, Kama, go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, Kama wants to
Yeah,
say
Jai
something.
Baba.
After that, Sanjay.
So
Karthik, you're
I
not
think
audible.
no,
You're
he's
Uh,
talking.
audible. Karthik
okay,
is
I think on
audible.
your side, Sanjay, please reconnect if you need to. The others are able to hear me.
So
Yeah,
the way I
Kama.
understand is that let's look at sanskara as an action or experience. Now, action is basically three things: action of thoughts, words, and deeds. Thoughts create weak impressions, which is thinking of the mental kind. subtle sanskaras created by our emotions, feelings. So subtle sanskaras and then action of deeds is what creates gross impressions, which are powerful impressions. Now, when you look at the Big Bang at the home point, what did really happen there? The latent who am I first initial urge created the first impression. So that was the first sanskaric impression that needed to be experienced. To experience that, the consciousness of the soul, the infinite unconsciousness of the soul state.
Hello.
Uh, yeah, hello. Can everybody hear me? Hello.
Yeah, we are able to hear. Continue,
Yeah.
Kama.
So the when you look at that first impression, that first sanskaric impression, rudimentary impression, created the form, meaning in the sense to experience that impression, the soul consciousness had to use a form which we can say from the quarks, gluons, subatomic particles, and so on, as we seen the whole evolution process going on. The whole idea was to have consciousness become full and complete in the human form, which then starts to go through spending sanskaras, which we call experiences of intelligent action or unintelligent action, and then unwinding sanskaras, which is basically the intelligent action of unwinding sanskaras. So, in a way, the impression had to be experienced first so that consciousness can become full and complete because consciousness was very rudimentary. So that is the big picture part. And then the rest of the thing that happens in between is just, what we call as evolution, reincarnation, and involution, which Baba says are basically part of the whole grand illusion. Because the only real birth and death is the real death is Manonash, and real birth is liberation. So, Jai Baba.
So and the why of it? Why go through experience then? So it's just the Leela.
No, the experience is basically that, as you know, during the first initial urge, simultaneously and spontaneously, infinite consciousness and infinite unconsciousness happened.
Correct.
So, infinite consciousness became the eternal avataric infinite consciousness, the first avatar of First Master. And then the infinite unconsciousness needs to unite with the infinite consciousness to know itself as Paramatma. So, because the infinite unconsciousness has got a very rudimentary impression of who am I, that you am I had to take the most rudimentary form, which is the subatomic particle. And basically, it is consciousness has to become full and complete. So, in fact, in the book God in a Pill, I read another definition of consciousness. Initially, I thought a human form has super consciousness in the human form, but actually it is only in the fifth and sixth plane that the human being experiences super consciousness. Baba calls it sub super consciousness in the gross world, and then in the subtle world he calls it sub super consciousness uh, in that God in a pill discussion. So, coming back to experience, experience is basically for consciousness to become full and complete in the human form, correct?
Yeah.
And then,
Correct. Fair.
and then in the human form, it is actually spending the sanskaras because it has no control on it till the animal form. So, till the animal form, consciousness is evolving, and then in the human form, it is going through reincarnation and involution, which we call as spending sanskaras and unwinding sanskaras up till the sixth plane. Jai Baba.
Thank you. I think so. Just to summarize, so my question was, why do you have to go through the multifarious experiences? The answer is very spot on, which is, uh, firstly, to get to experience anything and answer the question, who am I? I need consciousness towards which there is a journey, and towards which I first uh, take the forms that gets me to the human form where consciousness reaches its peak. Sanjay, are you able to hear us now?
Yes, yes. I
All right.
disconnected and reconnected. Maybe my
All right.
end. Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Okay. So let's continue.
Okay. Natural and non-natural sanskaras. The sanskaras are of two types, natural and non-natural, according to the manner in which they come into existence. The sanskaras the, the soul gathers during the period of organic evolution are natural. These sanskaras come into existence as the soul successively takes up and abandons the various subhuman forms, thus gradually passing from the apparently inanimate stage, such as stone or metal, to the human state, where there is full development of consciousness. All the sanskaras that cluster around the soul before it attains the human form are the product of natural evolution and are referred to as natural sanskaras. They should be carefully distinguished from the sanskaras cultivated by the soul after the attainment of the human form. The sanskaras that get attached to the soul during the human stage are cultivated under the moral freedom of consciousness with its accompanying responsibility of choice between good and bad, virtue and vice. They are referred to as non natural sanskaras. Though these post human sanskaras are directly dependent upon the natural, they are created under fundamentally different conditions of life and are in their origin comparatively more recent than the natural sanskaras. The difference in the length of the formative periods and in the conditions of formation is responsible for the difference in the degree of firmness of attachment of the natural and non natural sanskaras to the soul. The non natural sanskaras are not as difficult to eradicate as the natural, which have an ancient heritage and are therefore more firmly rooted. The obliteration of the natural sanskaras is practically impossible unless the neophyte is the recipient of the grace
Sorry.
and the intervention of a Sadguru or perfect master. So I take a pause here. I mean, again, uh, the importance or significance of the grace of the perfect master comes up. And it also says that the non-natural sanskaras are not as difficult to eradicate as the natural.
Yeah.
But
So and the other thing is this the he's making an important linkage here. So non-natural sanskaras that are cultivated during the human stage are also cultivated under the moral freedom of consciousness. I'd like to say that the moral freedom of consciousness is probably the closest Baba ever gets to free will. Okay, this is all is the free will. Anyway, Kama has to say something.
No, good point. I think, Karthik, what you said about the moral aspect of consciousness, where people want to know whether it is fate or destiny which dominates, or free will or power of choice.
Hmm.
So we all understand that 50% is genes, which we call as sanskaras, and 50% is the environment. A dog, cat, is not able to have free will or power of choice because they are pre-programmed.
Correct.
Human beings are like artificial intelligence. You can use the information to build a nuclear reactor for
Beautiful.
electricity, or you can build a bomb. So technically, the human being is already there. It is only a matter of what choice he's making. So when a person is using his free will, if he's able to make the right choice, then he's not allowing his sanskaras to dominate him. He's using his what we call as values. Baba has talked about spiritual values or human values, which we understand, or what I call as the universal laws of nature. Because if you really look at it, we are all under the same universal laws of nature, whether you're of any kingdom. Except in the human kingdom, we have the power of choice or analytical reasoning mind, and now this is the age of intuition, as Baba said. So another point is that is why this particular paragraph is very clear that without the grace of a perfect master, one can't go from the sixth plane to the seventh plane because of the natural sanskaras or the organic animal sanskaras. So hence we have to work on our non-natural human sanskaras, which we call as inorganic sanskaras, which are difficult but not impossible. And that is the point here. Jai
Yeah,
Baba.
personally can be done. Doesn't need the grace of a master, and you can sort them out yourself. But the key point that you made and you confirmed rather to what I said is important to take away, right? So in the human form is the first time that we get this concept of viveka, this concept of judgment, this concept of choice, this concept of making action or inaction, this choice of making violence or non-violence. So, till that time, the ability to add new sanskaras and everything is to use Kama's phraseology, pre-programmed. Pre-programmed as in it's almost like like a dumb firmware, right? So if you look at computers actually before artificial intelligence, and again, I hate that the term artificial intelligence because people don't understand exactly what it is, and it's a confusing term. But to take an example, let's take a smallest chip that everybody uses every day. What is that chip? That chip is the SIM card, right? Everybody has a SIM card with them. Do you know what is the only role of the SIM card? It's also a computer. It's a computer with pre-programmed rules, and the only function of that computer is to draw power from the battery. That's how it gets to life. It only connects to the cell network, right? The towers, and it identifies itself. It says, here's Kama's number, I am alive, and that's it. So this computer can't do anything else. So till the human stage, we are like very, very dumb, basic computers that are programmed to do a set of functions. It's not as dumb as the SIM card, which does only one. Maybe in the early elements, quarks and gaseous elements, there were very little function. Again, very tight programming, but very little function. As you get as you get through the evolution process, your functionality and breadth and scope of operations, mental and physical, go up, but they are constrained by, I like the word pre-programmed, right? So they are totally pre-programmed to do something till you come to the human consciousness, right? So again, I'm in no rush to finish the chapters, but I think the discussion is what makes this interesting. We have been through this read before, so please jump in, question, ask, and dwell upon each of these lines and paras and enjoy. Right? Yes, sir. Start with the subtitle, then we go back up. Shok.
Manifested life arises out of will to be conscious in absolute. The non-natural sanskaras are dependent upon the natural, and the natural sanskaras are a result of evolution. The next important question is, why should manifested life in different stages of evolution?
I'll pause you there. How are non-natural sanskaras dependent upon natural? Just now we learned what non-natural is, and we thought that it's done only after viveka or judgment or moral choice comes into life. So how is it even dependent on something that I acquired as an animal? So let's read on, but please hold on to this thought in the first line.
No,
Next
I
important.
believe that I believe that the lust, greed, anger is from the animal kingdom.
Correct?
So whatever the lust, greed, anger that we experience in the human state is derived from the animal kingdom. That is why the unnatural sanskaras, human sanskaras, are dependent on the organic natural sanskaras. That's my understanding.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's uncover that. Yeah, agreed. Please go ahead.
It's definitely a progression, right, Karthik? We read
Mm-hmm.
it's a progression. I mean, see the evolution of the life forms itself is an evolution. So the sanskaras, I mean, the natural sanskaras and the non-natural sanskaras both have to dissolve. So they are related and they're dependent, right?
Correct.
I'll continue.
They are dependent, but the nature of the dependence here is you get to one from the other, and like Kama said, it's basically your pravrittis, your attributes from the lower forms drive your behavior in the even in the human form in the early stages. Slowly you shake it off, right? Slowly you get better and better. But early stages, yes, there's a heavy dependence on your natural sanskaras.
So there is a positive correlation, you can say.
Correct. Positive avoidable correlation. If
Now,
I came into the human form without lust, anger, and greed of the animal form, I'd be better off.
yes.
Yes,
The
sir. Please. The
the
next
next
important question. Yeah.
question. Yeah. The next important question is, why should manifested life in different stages of evolution emerge out of absolute reality, which is infinite? The need for manifested life arises out of the impetus in the absolute to become conscious of itself. The subtopic is manifested life arises out of the will to be conscious in absolute. The progressive manifestation of life through evolution is ultimately brought about by the will to be conscious, which is inherent in the infinite. In order to understand creation in terms of thought, it is necessary to posit this will to be conscious in the absolute in a latent state prior to the act of manifestation.
So the now to use another phrase, the teleological purpose. Why does even evolution happen? Is it's a very very important thing that's brought out here, right? So why does evolution happen? Like famously, Darwin got it wrong, like Baba said. Darwin didn't get it wrong, but Darwin I don't want to misquote Baba, but he said something on the lines of he was in the right direction, but he didn't get the full picture, right? He didn't get the full logic of evolution. The logic of evolution is exactly this: the will to be conscious in the absolute, and that's all is driving the need for higher forms, the need for higher and higher forms till such time that you get to a form where the reaching the state of manifestation or reaching the state of God consciousness is possible. Come on, I think just jump in. There's just four of us, so we're not disturbing each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think I have not seen anywhere that Baba has talked about Darwin, but for me, it was awakening when I read Mayor Baba in New York from the New York Public Library. Like I said, the three things that jumped out after reading God Speaks, Discourses, and other literature was there's nothing like good and bad, there's goodness and lesser degree of goodness. And everything that you see, the objects around you, they all have different degrees of consciousness, which we know based on the different kingdoms. But after I read God Speaks about evolution, reincarnation, and involution, that's when it came to me that, hey, Darwin was on the right track, except he didn't have the knowledge of consciousness. So it is not evolution of forms, which is what Darwin said, but it's evolution of consciousness, which adopts different forms, because consciousness needs to evolve, and it is taking these different forms to reach full consciousness in the human form. So I don't know whether maybe I have not read it, but I've never come
I'll
across.
find the reference. I heard somebody talking about this. So it may be in Lord Meher, it may be somewhere else that that he mentions Darwin. Is it in Listen Humanity? I'm not sure. Let me find a reference for Baba and Darwin and then come back to you guys.
Okay, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, but in the end, it is all about the development of the forms of consciousness, right? How we
Yeah,
evolve.
yeah. No, no. So what's the purpose? What's driving this? Why does so? If you look at Darwin, what did Darwin say? Darwin says that a lower form tries to get to a higher form because of the purpose of survival of the fittest. So animals want to get stronger, animals wants to get smarter, and so on and so forth. Right? He was on the right direction, but he did not know spirituality. He did not think beyond provable science. So, provable science stopped at stronger, higher, faster, and hence you survive. So, he said that evolution happened because of that. But then once you get the gift of I mean I would say once you start looking at it, looking at the world through true values, the lens of true values, the lens of true values tells you that it's actually the journey is consciousness, no, the will to like I said, like it says here, the will to be conscious in the absolute is the teleological purpose of evolution. It's the teleological purpose of life, but life is broken up into multiple lives because it's one soul that's living, but it's broken in multiple lives. And through those lives, this evolution happens of forms, but that's driven by evolution of consciousness, not the other way around.
Agreed. And another way of looking at it could be that probably Darwin was just concentrating on the gross sphere or the physical aspect of life.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly what I said. So that's exactly what I said. Unfortunately, the Darwin, apart from not meeting Meher Baba, probably did not think of anything other than provable science. So he was lost in science, and science is all about being able to look at the world in uh, gross terms, if you can say. Yeah,
or physical form, I mean, gross terms.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Perfect. Okay,
Correct.
let's continue.
Leher within absolute compared to a wave on the ocean. Although for the purpose of an intellectual explanation of creation, the impetus in the absolute has to be regarded as a will to be conscious. To describe it as a sort of inherent desire is to falsify its true nature. It is better described as a leher or an impulse, which is so inexplicable, spontaneous, and sudden that to call it this or that is to have its reality undone. As all intellectual categories necessarily turn out to be inadequate for grasping the mystery of creation, the nearest approach to understanding its nature is not through intellectual concept but through analogy. Just as a wave going across the surface of an ocean, still ocean, calls forth into being a wild stir of innumerable bubbles, the layer creates myriads of individual souls out of the indivisible infinity of the oversoul. But all abounding absolute remains the substratum of all the individual souls. The individual souls are the creation of a sudden and spontaneous impulse and have, therefore, hardly any anticipation of their destined continuity of existence throughout the cyclic period until the final subsiding of the initial stir. Within the undifferentiated being of the Absolute is born the mysterious point, the own point, which through which comes forth the variegated manliness of creation and the vast and the vasty deep. Should it be vastly deep? I don't,
Yeah, I think so.
typo, yes. And the vastly deep, which a fraction of a second before was icy still, is a steel with life of innumerable frothy cells who secure their separateness in definite size and shape through self limitation within the foamy surface of the ocean.
Okay, what I think these two paragraphs are better. This concept is better handled in. I mean, I am reminded so much of beams, right? That's what these two the Vim the Vim chapter is a much better delineation of this concept than anywhere else in Baba literature. And of course, the same thing is being said, but it's said better there, right?
Shall I last line again?
Please.
Within the undifferentiated being of the absolute is born the mysterious point, the own point, through which comes forth the variegated manyness of creation. And the vasty deep, which is a fraction of a second before was icy still, is astir with life of innumerable frothy selves who secure their separateness in definite size and shape through self-limitation within the foamy surface of the ocean.
And I think, as you rightly pointed out, this is deserving of being marked out.
And it can also be related to the page 1 of God Speaks, the soul and the oversoul.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Okay.
Absolute, unchanged by bhas of manifestation. All this is merely an analogy. It would be a mistake to imagine that some real change takes place in the absolute when the layer of the latent will to be conscious makes itself effective by bringing into existence the world of manifestation. There can be no act of involution or evolution within the being of the absolute, and nothing real can be born from the absolute, as any real change is necessarily a negotiation of the
Negation.
oh sorry is necessary a negation of the absolute. The change implied in the creation of the manifested world is not an ontological change, that is not a change in the being of the absolute reality. It is only an apparent change.
Beautiful paragraph, right? So even birth, even everything is no change to the absolute. Because if there was a possibility of change, then it's not the absolute. To be the absolute, it's unchanging. To be unchanging, all of this, but then all of this is the nothing that we see, the phenomenal world is something that we can touch and feel, right? So we are on this call today, we are talking, we are fighting, we are debating, we are discussing, we meet our wife, we hug our children, whatever. So that is only apparent. So that's the key thing. I think these are all amazing expressions, right? uh, the phraseology, I mean, is beautiful. Please
Yeah.
continue.
And as Kama says, it's all like a movie.
Yes.
In one sense, the act of manifestation must be regarded as a sort of expansion of the illimitable being of the absolute, as though that act, the infinite, which is without consciousness, seeks to attain its own consciousness.
Can you
As
read
this,
that line again, please?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
In one sense, the act of manifestation must be regarded as a sort of expansion of the illimitable being of the absolute, as though that act,
As through that act.
I'm sorry, as
Yeah.
through the act, the infinite, which is without consciousness, seeks to attain its own consciousness. As this expansion of reality is effected through its self limitation in various forms of life, the act of manifestation might, with equal aptness, be called the process of timeless contraction. Whether the act of manifestation is looked upon as a sort of expansion of reality or its timeless contraction. It is preceded by an initial urge or movement which might, in terms of thought, be regarded as an inherent and latent desire to be conscious.
Hmm.
So this would explain the layer, right?
Yeah, I'm still thinking. Okay. In one sense, the act of manifest. So it's basically the concept of uh, the phenomenal world is a timeless contraction, because this apparent separateness and the idea of the forms is actually silly to the absolute, or not silly. It's not its nature, but it's just going through this, right? So there is the expansion, which is um, the consciousness, and the timeless contraction is nothing but the act of the physical world. Is that what's being said here? Is that a right summary of this paragraph? Anyone?
It's a tough interpretation, because the act of timeless contraction, because when you really look at the phenomenal world, it's expanding. Okay. And then they say that, of course, it will go back to singularity. If it has come from singularity, the
Yeah.
home point, then it should go back to the home point. So, in a way, once the expansion starts, there comes a point when it has to go through a contraction, because everything is about waxing and waning. So, everything in the universe is waxing and waning, whether you call it expansion or contraction, that depends on what kind of magnification level you're looking at. Say, for example, when you're looking at the subatomic particles, they are going through creation, preservation, dissolution in microseconds, zero point zero 0.00, whatever. Whereas when you look at the whole universe, so if you just look at the cosmos, they know that its birth is 13.8 billion years, but definitely they are not able to tell you when exactly will the expansion stop or when the contraction will happen. They only know that this whole thing will start to disperse, everything will become, I forget the term.
Can I stop
But
you there? Can I stop you there? I don't think the timeless contraction being referred to here is the scientific way of looking at contraction. I think it's just a play of words. Expansion is obvious. It's nothing but the whole of consciousness increasing from the stage of the lahar. But the contraction here being referred to is the self limitation. So I'll just read this line again. As this expansion of reality is affected through its self limitation, so reality is getting self limited in various forms of life, the act of manifestation might, with equal aptness, be called the process of timeless contraction. So, the act of manifestation here is referring to the self limitation of the bigger reality. That is, the world, the phenomenal world in its various forms through evolution up to and including the human consciousness. So I think that's all that's being said here. I think I also went to the big contraction, big expansion, and got confused. What do you think?
no, but still, what you said is perfect. The expansion of reality is affected through it, because it is a self limitation. As long as you have a form, there is a self limitation. And we know this whole process of creation, evolution, reincarnation, involution is also limited in its own way, because it is part of the Maya. But I'm trying to figure out, when he says with equal aptness be called the process of timeless contraction. Probably it can be interpreted many different ways. Right now, I'm not able to kind of, so I think as long as we understand that what you said, the expansion of reality is affected through its self limitation in various forms of life. If you understand that, that's good enough. So
Yeah.
that is why in the second line he says whether the act of manifestation is looked upon as a sort of expansion of reality or as its timeless contraction. So, in that context, I was saying that the manifestation, if it is looked upon from the phenomenal world of existence, the cosmos, so the cosmos is going through an expansion. The galaxies are moving faster than ever. So, whole cosmos is expanding. But there is a school of thought which says there will come a time when the contraction will happen and it will come back to a singularity. So that is why I looked at the second line in that perspective from the phenomenal
Fair enough.
growth of existence.
Yeah, it's
So
it's, it's also. Sorry, I thought you finished. Complete it.
good,
Yeah.
good, good, good.
Yeah, it's also the expansion and contraction both are there because as the imagination is expanding, it is is there, and then the contraction of soul, going merging back to its origin. So whether the act of manifestation is looked as a sort of expansion of reality, or it is it's timeless contraction. So it is expanding and contracting in the sense of the soul together. So that's I thought that came to my mind.
Right. I have
So
another
I think
yeah,
insight
the
that
yeah,
other
came to
way.
me. One
Okay,
second.
go ahead,
I
Karthik.
just added this insight
Yeah.
that this act of manifestation, when it looked upon as a phenomenal, the gross expansion of the cosmos, but in the second part it says the act of manifestation is preceded by an initial urge or movement, which we know is the first initial urge or the most original whim, who am I, which might, in terms of thought, be regarded as an inherent and latent desire to be conscious. So, as
correct, correct.
Sanjay said, the basic
Yeah.
thing is what I have understood is that consciousness needs the material body and the material world to get liberated.
Mm,
Without the body,
yes.
without the sphere of existence, consciousness will not be able to get liberated. And the second line, which
Right.
says, regarded as an inherent and latent desire to be conscious, Baba has said in
Yes.
Discourses, this whole process is going from unconscious divinity to conscious divinity. So, to
Yeah.
experience that conscious divinity, you need this phenomenal world of existence or form or cosmos as a medium to achieve that union. Okay, Baba.
Absolutely. Good one. Yeah. We could decipher it out together. Oh, that's the beauty. Yeah.
No, that's the whole beauty.
Yeah.
Sahvas.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sahvas. So we
Good. Good.
need we
So
need each other
We
to
yeah. We
uncover.
came. We came to the same page at least. Hopefully correctly. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Yes.
it's like putting the parts of the puzzle together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I found a reference that I'd like to share. So this is Baba's Tiffin lectures, and he's talking about an unrelated subject. He's talking about types of conviction, but where he says Darwin, when he propounded the theory of evolution, based his intellectual convictions merely on science, scientific research, scientific knowledge. He never thought or even dreamt that God's hand might be involved in the process. So this nails it, right?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get back.
I think you should put that as a reference, and
Yes,
also this particular paragraph that we read as an important, interpretation that needs to be done.
I'll
Yeah.
put it on on the Trello.
Karthik, can you also post it on Telegram?
No, I will not.
Telegram after 2 days you will lose it in any case. It will
Yeah.
go up so much. After a week you never know where is that. You can just for today it is okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we are,
Okay.
yeah,
Let's
manifoldness of creation. अशोक जी गुस्सा हो गए?
नहीं, the manifestation of creation and the separateness of the individual souls exist only in imagination. The very existence of creation or of the world of manifestation is grounded in bhas or illusion, so that in spite of the manifestation of numberless individual souls, the oversoul remains the same without suffering any real expansion or contraction, increment or decrement. Although the oversoul undergoes no modification due to the bhas or illusion or the individuation, there comes into existence its apparent differentiation into many individual souls.
Okay, this explains this even more
Yeah.
fully, this paragraph. Right?
Yes.
So keyword again, apparent differentiation. And then apparent differentiation is nothing but the bhas or the illusion of individuation. Right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Multicolored
Correct.
souls.
Unreal multicolored.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good sentence, actually. Very, very
Yeah.
precise. Yeah.
The most original bhas or illusion into which the oversoul was allured synchronizes with the first impression. It therefore marks the beginning of the formation of sanskaras. The formation of sanskaras start in the most finite center, which becomes the first focus for the manifestation of the individuality of the soul. In the gross sphere, a focus of this manifestation is represented by the three-dimensional and inert stone, which has the most rudimentary and partial consciousness. This vague and undeveloped state of consciousness.
Hey, sorry. What happened?
We went to somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. 1 second. Let me remove all this stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
1 second before, so that it doesn't happen again. Let me. Yeah.
Are we good to
Sorry.
go?
Yes.
This way, actually, this
Yes.
is most original bhas. This vague and undeveloped state of consciousness is hardly sufficient to illumine its own shape and form, and is hopelessly inadequate to fulfill the purpose of creation, which was to enable the oversoul to know itself. While, whatever little capacity for illumination consciousness has in the stone phase is ultimately derived from the oversoul and not from the body of the soul, of the stone. But consciousness is unable to enlarge its scope independently of the body of the stone because the oversoul first gets identified with consciousness and then through it with the stone form. Still, all further development of consciousness is arrested by the body of the stone and its languor. Evolution of higher forms of vehicles of manifestation becomes indispensable. The development of the consciousness has to proceed side by side with the evolution of the body by which it is conditioned. Therefore, the will to be conscious, which is inherent in the vastness of the soul, seeks to seeks by divine determination a progressive evolution of the vehicles of expression. So
Okay.
I
If I.
pause here. Here
Yeah, please.
there is a parallel. That means evolution and also the development of consciousness has to proceed side by side. So I think that sort of explains both the the evolution which Darwin had done and the and the development and expansion and the enhancement of the consciousness of forms.
Okay, I have agreed totally. I have a question. So let's start with the Lahar. We have the Lahar, and then we have the gaseous forms. Let's ignore that for a bit. We start with the stone. The stone has a certain level of consciousness, and we all agree that that level of consciousness is very basic, so basic that it cannot understand the oversoul. To quote Baba right here, right? Whatever little capacity of illumination consciousness has in the stone phase is ultimately derived from the oversoul and not from the body. And it's not big enough, is what he says, right? Where is that? Yeah, this vague and undeveloped state of consciousness is hardly sufficient to illumine its own shape and form and is hopelessly inadequate to fulfill the purpose of creation, which was to enable the oversoul to know itself. So we know that the consciousness in the stone state at this stage is very, very small. Now, the question that popped up in my head is, if that consciousness is so low and so incapable, how did it know that it needs to move to another form, evolve its consciousness? So is that function determined by the oversoul, like it says in this line, or is it determined by the individual smallest soul? So is evolution of consciousness and evolution of form a function of the oversoul and the absolute, and not really of the smallest soul? Something to think about. I hope my question
Yeah,
is
yeah.
clear.
Yeah, your question is clear. I think it's just a system design actually. It is not a function of our soul. Once the soul has come out, after the whole process is already predetermined. It's a divine game that has been, already architected for each soul. So each soul, as it progresses, tries to do things or identify itself, and that's the nature of the soul because it has come out of a whim. And those original whim and the little whims that all souls will keep on happening. No, let me do this. Let me do this. Why cannot? Why, if I am a dog, why cannot? Why I cannot do certain things which dog doesn't do? Why cannot try? You know, climb up a tree, for example. It'll try but fail. So when it is tries and fails, that the impression is created that I should have some capability to go up a tree. So that's how these urges keep on happening, and that's how the evolution is sustained. Because that form which is created for a dog, which is not suited to climb a tree, will ultimately die, and then it will gain a form which is enables it to climb a tree, for example. It's like that. That's what I think.
Good thinking, good answer.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
further ask a question or comment on what you're saying.
Jai Baba, let me
JK is saying something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Before that, yeah, go ahead,
yeah.
come.
Yeah.
Yes.
What I've understood is that the drop soul is part of the oversoul. It's a holographic image, so there is no difference there. We know that. The only thing is that the drop soul, because it has separated itself from the oversoul, and it has very rudimentary consciousness. But according to God speaks, everything is latent in it. The even the whim to know itself, right up to how it needs to go through it, it's already latent in it. It just starts to manifest, as you rightly said, based on the divine design. How the drop soul will do it. So first of all, we have to understand that there is no difference between the drop soul and the oversoul. So that answers the question whether it is coming from the oversoul or the drop soul is irrelevant. It is already latent because it is programmed to go through this divine design. So that is how I would answer your question. Jai Baba.
Agreed.
What Kama said, uh, may I read the first 4 lines of God Speaks?
Sure, please.
So this is part 1, states of consciousness. All souls, Atmas, were, are, and will be in the oversoul Paramatma. Souls, Atmas are all one. All souls are infinite and eternal. They are formless. All souls are one. There is no difference in soul or in their being and existence as souls. So, just to corroborate or to reiterate what Kama said, that the all souls are part of the oversoul. So, I mean, that of course is known, but it is relevant to what we are discussing.
Thank you. It is
Good point,
relevant.
Ashok. Good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's absolutely relevant, and thank you for that. So I think I like the words, the two things that Kama said, which is one, the concept of latency of the oversoul, and pre-programming, including all of the attributes of the oversoul. It's right. So it's the smallest soul is basically limiting itself by its own veil, by its own uh, processes, mental processes, which we will learn through this chapter to be as sanskaras. So that latency ensures the evolution, or ensures the push. Right, the question I had. Thank you. Let's
Correct.
continue.
Just like the avatar comes veiled before he is unveiled, he comes with Vijnani Sanskaras, and then he's unveiled by the five perfect masters who actually bring the descent of the avatar. And then once he is unveiled, he knows he is the avatar and goes on Yoga Sanskaras. The difference out here is drop souls are also in the same category. They come, as you said, veiled because of that separation that happens, and that consciousness is of a rudimentary nature. And then they keep accumulating prarabdha sanskaras, which is what we dissolve, and then basically go into the seventh plane with no sanskaras. Yeah, Baba.
Awesome. Yep. Okay. So Ashokji, if you're tired, I'll read for some time. I completely forgot about rotation. I think we should have somebody responsible for rotation. I'm very bad at it.
Absolutely. Just before you, yeah, you can definitely read. And
Yeah.
I just had something which, like an analogy. So if you have a mirror and you can cover it with dust, that dust which you have to remove is the sanskara, and then we can look into our souls.
Yes, yes. Baba also uses that analogy. I was actually thinking of that when I said before I struggled and got the word veiled. So it is veiled, but better analogy is the mirror. So I am as good as myself, but the mirror is dirty. So that's where the struggle starts.
Ji Baba.
But
Yeah,
Karthik,
Baba.
you had a question. Karthik, you had a question after Sanjay Nigam. Something you were going to say, and I interrupted in between.
No, no. So
Or
I was
follow.
just going to comment, but I think I got my answer, which is the latent nature of the oversoul and that, with the fact that the limitation, the self-imposed limitation of the smallest soul is only apparent, right? So in that sense, these two things acting together is what uh, forces the consciousness to move from form to form. Again, maybe if I want to ask a question, I'll ask one more. So does every now to take Sanjay ji's example, right? He said the dog. Not all dogs want to climb trees, right? So one dog decided to climb trees, or wanted to, and then struggled, and then whatever, maybe moved to the next birth or whatever, right? So maybe that's what you were trying to say, Sanjay ji, in your analogy. So some acts in a life of a rudimentary soul move it to the next soul, next form, or at least move it in the process of evolution. So then my question is that not predictable? And is it only linked to how much of it is actually free will type of behavior? How much of it is the dog's intent in that soul? How much of it is the monkey's intent in that soul for it to move towards higher and higher forms? Or is it just the
Nothing.
8,
There is
84 lakh
nothing
births? It's just mathematical.
up till up till the animal evolution till the human form. It is totally a mechanical process, like you say, pre-programmed. They have nothing they can do. Okay. So the only way you can use your free will power of choices in the human form. That is why it is called organic natural sanskaras, which is pre-programmed. And then once you reach the human form, the beauty is no more evolution of consciousness. There is not even evolution of forms. The human form is the perfect form. That is why we call it we are in the image of God, but we are not behaving like God. So to behave like God, which is your natural state, you have to go through the spending sanskaras phase of reincarnation and unwinding sanskaras phase of involution. And then with the grace of a perfect master, you get nirvana or nirvikalpa samadhi, or you get moksha, ordinary mukti, whatever the case is. Yeah, Baba.
Thank you. So I just went to grab my coffee. Give me a second, I'll start reading. Subtitle: Progressive Evolution of Consciousness and Form. Thus, the oversoul forges for itself a new vehicle of expression in the metal form, in which consciousness becomes slightly more intensified. Even at this stage, it is very rudimentary, and so it has to get transferred to still higher forms of vegetation and trees, in which there is an appreciable advance in the development of consciousness through the maintenance of the vital processes of growth, decay, and reproduction. Emergence of a still more developed form of consciousness becomes possible when the oversoul seeks manifestation through the instinctive life of insects, birds, and animals, which are fully aware of their bodies and their respective surroundings and develop a sense of self-protection and aim at and aim at establishing mastery over their environment. In the higher animals, intellect or reasoning also appears to a certain extent, but its working is strictly limited by the play of their instincts, like the instinct of self-protection and the instinct for the care and preservation of the young. So even in animals, consciousness has not had its full development, with the result that it is unable to serve the initial purpose of the oversoul to have self-illumination, biggest self-illumination. So yeah, I'll pause. Any comments? Any thoughts? So it's clear. So we just start from the rudimentary stone form to the metal form, then trees, vegetables and trees is what he says. Then it goes through life of insects, birds, and animals. In the second paragraph, there is a specific mention of the birth of intellect or reasoning. Again, a very limited form of it. A limited form of it driven by instinct. And what are the examples of that? He gives the example of self-protection, which is safety, security. So I know how to fight. So if I'm attacked, I repel the attack and attack back and so on. And this is something that appears multiple times. Baba brings it out multiple times. Preservation of the young. So even in love, animals, he says, animals, the love of the mother animal to the kids, right, to the offspring. So that's brought out here as, but in a different context. Here, the context is intellect driven by the instinct of preservation of the young. Yeah. So let me continue. Human consciousness is the next subtitle. The oversoul finally takes the human form, in which consciousness attains its fullest development with complete awareness of the self and the environment. At this stage, the capacity of reasoning has the widest range of activity and is unlimited in its scope. But as the oversoul gets identified through its consciousness with the gross body, consciousness does not serve the purpose of illuminating the nature of the oversoul. However, as consciousness has its fullest development in the human form, there is in it a latent potentiality for self-realization. And the will to be conscious with which evolution started becomes fructified in the Sadguru or man God, who is the fairest flower of humanity. I'd like to read the second part of this paragraph again, if you don't mind.
Definitely.
At this stage, the capacity of reasoning has the widest range of activity and is unlimited in its scope. But as the oversoul gets identified through its consciousness with the gross body, consciousness does not serve the purpose of illuminating the nature of the oversoul. However, as consciousness has its fullest development in the human form, there is in it a latent potentiality for self-realization. And the will to be conscious with which evolution started becomes fructified in the Sadguru or man God, who is the fairest flower of humanity. Now, key question.
Yeah.
Why is the Sadguru called out and not the avatar? Think and answer.
Sadgurus are there all the time, right? Avatar comes only every 700 years. So it is Sadguru's job for the emancipation of the consciousness. So to take him from sixth to the seventh plane, right? That's what we understand. The beautiful world was in the earlier page was the potentiality, latent potentiality. So I see the action points all the times. So if everything is potential is there. So unless there is an effort, that potential remains subdued or underutilized or whatever. So it is our effort. Yeah, so it's our effort in the journey which enables us to exploit that potential actually and shorten the journey.
Perfect.
Yeah, I like that.
So I asked, Ashok.
If I may just add to what Sanjay said, the map is there, but the walking has to be done by us.
Absolutely. Beautiful analogy, Ashokji.
Yeah. So the reason I asked about the Sadguru is, see, the timing of when something is written in discourses becomes very important, right? And that's one of the, if you recollect, one of the projects for MBA. So how do we timestamp these things so we get a better understanding? So ideally, if this was the way I'm understanding it, maybe Baba has not brought out the aspects of Avatar and the nature of Avatar. He's not brought out completely, and that's why he's just stopping at Sadguru. Your point
don't
is
think
also
it is
very
like
powerful.
That. Yeah,
I think
it is
your
universal
point
in
is
time.
more,
Yeah.
because
The timeline
Sadguru
is
is there
universal.
all the time, rather than periodic, right? So yeah, fair enough. Okay, winding of sanskaras. The oversoul cannot attain self-knowledge through the ordinary consciousness of humanity because it is enveloped in a multitude of sanskaras or impressions. As consciousness passes from the apparently inanimate state of stone or metal, then to the vegetative life of the trees, then onward to the instinctive states of insects, birds, and animals, and finally to the full consciousness of the human state, it is continually creating new sanskaras and becoming enveloped in them. These natural sanskaras are increased even after attaining the human state by the further creation of non-natural sanskaras through manifold experiences and multitudinous activities. Thus, the acquisition of sanskaras is unceasingly going on during the process of evolution as well as during the later period of human activities. This acquisition of sanskaras may be likened to the winding up of a piece of string around a stick, the string representing the sanskaras and the stick representing the mind of the individual soul. The winding up starts from the beginning of creation and persists through all the evolutionary stages and the human form. And the wound string represents all the sanskaras, natural as well as non-natural. Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay. The examples of potency of impressions. The fresh sanskaras that are constantly being created in human life are due to the multifarious objects and ideas with which consciousness finds itself confronted. These sanskaras bring about important transformations in the various states of consciousness. Impressions created by beautiful objects have the potency of arousing in consciousness the innate capacity for appreciating and enjoying beauty. When one hears a good piece of music or sees a beautiful landscape, the impressions caught from these objects give one a feeling of exaltation. In the same way, when one contacts the personality of a thinker, one may become interested in new avenues of thought and inspired with an enthusiasm utterly foreign to one's consciousness formerly. Not only impressions of objects or persons, but also impressions of ideas and superstitions have great efficacy in determining the conditions of consciousness. So there is impressions of superstitions. The power of impressions of superstitions might be illustrated by means of a ghost story. Of the different realms of human thought, there are perhaps none as abounding in superstitions as those connected with ghosts, who, according to popular belief, are supposed to harass and torture their victims in curious ways. Once upon a time, during the Mughal rule in India, a highly educated man who was very skeptical of the stories about ghosts made up his mind to verify them from personal experience. He had been warned against visiting a certain graveyard on the night of Amavasya, the darkest night of the month, for it was reported to be the habitation of a very dreadful ghost who unfailingly made its appearance whenever an iron nail was hammered into the ground within the limits of the graveyard. With a hammer in one hand and a nail in the other, he walked straight into the graveyard on the night of Amavasya and chose a spot bare of grass in order to drive in the nail. The ground was dark and his loosely hanging cloak was equally dark. When he sat on the ground and tried to hammer in the nail, an end of his cloak, an end of his cloak lay between the nail and the ground and was pinned down. He finished hammering and felt that he was successful with the experiment without encountering the ghost. But as he tried to rise to leave the spot, he felt a strong he wait a minute. He finished But as he tried to rise to leave the spot, he felt a strong pull toward the ground and he became panic stricken. Owing to the operation of previous impressions, he could not think of anything except the ghost who, he thought, had caught him at last. The shock of the thought was so great that the poor man died of heart failure. This story illustrates the tremendous power that sometimes resides in the impressions created by superstition. Right? What is this? Yeah. Okay. We have a new acronym here, or at least an acronym that I've created. Solidified might, inertness, and immobile and durable. What is a sanskara? Okay. Experience becomes harmonious when freed from sanskaras. The power and effect of impressions can hardly be overestimated. An impression is solidified might, and its inertness makes it immobile and durable. It can become so engraved upon the mind of a person that despite his sincere desire and effort to eradicate it, it takes its own time and has a way of working itself into action directly or indirectly. The mind contains many heterogeneous sanskaras, and while seeking expression in consciousness, they often clash with each other. The clash of sanskaras is experienced in consciousness as mental conflict. Experience is bound to be chaotic and enigmatic, full of oscillations, confusion, and complex tangles until consciousness is freed from all sanskaras, good and bad. Experience can become truly harmonious and integral only when consciousness is emancipated from the impressions. I pause here. Any thoughts?
I just wanted
Okay.
to ask, like last time
Sure.
also we read like when the sanskaras gets balanced, that time we get some like we may get not realization, but we can go through that path. First, what you can say? There's 7 steps, right? First step we can go after the sanskaras get balanced. So when we are going
No, no,
from
no,
the
no.
animal,
Sanskaras do not get balanced on the first. They go right up to 6, Ashish.
oh yeah, right up to six,
Exactly.
correct,
Yeah,
right up.
residual. Yeah, yeah.
So now
I
my birth
Uh,
started suppose from some amoeba or something, right, from the fish, and I goes to dog, then monkey. So till that part, as Sanjay ji said, it's like a predefined kind of thing, right? It's till that time there may be the sanskaras are not much.
Up
We can say those are the
up to
balanced
human
sanskaras, right?
body. Up to human.
Up to
Before
human body,
pre-human is predefined.
yeah,
Predefined. Yeah,
predefined.
up predefined.
Those are the
Yeah,
those are
because
the
there
balanced
is
sanskaras.
no and yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
After that, it is the freedom of choice is also given.
yeah. So now
You
the
can
balanced sanskara,
manage it. Yeah.
yeah, balance sanskara until you are coming to the human body, right? Now this is my the first birth of the human. So that time my sanskaras are balanced, right? Then why I need to go through the whole cycle again? Because on my first birth itself, I have my balance sanskaras. You
No,
got
no,
my
no,
point, right?
no, no, no,
no,
no,
no,
no,
no, no,
no,
no,
no.
no, no. Yeah, go
No, no,
ahead,
no, no, no,
Sanjay.
no,
Go
no,
ahead.
no. You have the sanskaras, balanced sanskar of the previous last animal form from where you took the first
Yeah.
human body. So those sanskaras are there, which are the prarabdha sanskaras, as we say, or the natural sanskaras, which are accumulated sanskaras of the all the previous births that you had before you came into human body, and that accumulated in the last animal form, right? That you had that last animal form sanskaras was not only of the last, because they had the accumulation, residual, whatever affected sanskaras, and last animal sanskaras are they lead it to you to first human form. So they carry from there, you know.
Yeah, but
It's
animal
not
sanskaras are
balanced.
balanced sanskaras. Oh, they are not
No,
balanced.
no, 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 no.
Balanced.
So
So
Ashish,
those are
we'll read somewhere else. You got to have a sum zero or a net zero of all sanskaras as a precondition to move on to the for God realization.
yeah. That's means I'm. You're right. But what my point is, until I come to the human birth, means even though there are sanskaras are there, but those are not like a bad or good kind of sanskaras, right? It's a animal sanskaras. They are just
Yeah,
yeah. So those are not actual sanskaras, which is like a bad or good. But at the sixth plane,
right.
it's a balance sanskara.
Leave the good bad. Leave the good bad part. Whatever form the last animal form you had, and then you go into first human form. Those sanskaras carry, right?
If
Okay.
I may
Because
clarify by asking a
the
question to Ashish.
level of sanskaras at that point was that you did not need another animal form to use those sanskaras. Your journey had already matured to that level. You know, you needed a human form to use the last animal form sanskaras, right? So I think it is very clearly in the initial chapters of God Speaks. It's there. Yeah.
If I may ask a question to clarify in Ashish's mind, good question. Why do you say that to go from a dog to a monkey or whatever form to form, there is a balancing. There is more
No,
exhaustion of
no,
that. Hi, there's no
that's a
balancing there.
predefined, right? As Sanjay
See,
said, it's a
Correct, and it's
yeah,
predefined.
pre-programmed. And it's
it's
pre-programmed.
Yeah.
So you
predefined, but
finish, you
as in
finish
human
all the
form,
experiences.
yeah, you finish the
Go ahead, sir.
experience of the previous birth, but during that experiencing journey, you also create new ones, right?
Yes.
So then the evolution goes to then you have to go to the next level, you know, after you have experienced everything of the previous form, you know. During the experience, you generate new experiences. As I was, telling that I am a dog and I am living the dog's life, but I want to climb the tree, you know. Those new sanskaras getting generated. So I become a leopard maybe later, you know. Whatever. I mean, it's just an example, not the in a real sense, but those sanskaras give rise to the next form. Yeah. Yeah, Baba.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, Baba.
I think we will stop here. We
Yeah.
come to our end of the time. So we'll stop here and continue. But I thought it was a great discussion. I really enjoyed the morning. I hope it was illuminating and enjoyable for all of you as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, Karthik.
Good. Good. Good.
It was a revisit, but it always reminds us.
No, I mean, I don't think each revisit gives me new ideas and
Yeah. Yeah. All of
illumination,
us.
right?
All of us.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. I'm glad we are doing this. And again, I think the focus is to do it in this space. There is no hurry. It's about
Yes. Yes.
doing it slowly, understanding, meditating on these concepts. Like Sanjay said, meditating for the rest of the week on one concept and building on it, like how he went from gross violence to mental violence and how they're all related and so on, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
may you enjoy the rest of the week, meditate on these concepts of the sanskaras and evolution, and let's connect back next week.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai
Jai
Baba.
Baba. Jai Baba,
Avtar
everyone.
Meher
Jai
Baba
Baba.
ki jai.
Baba ki jai.
Jai.
Avtar Meher Baba ki jai.
Thank you.